All right, this should be our last podcast for the year over chapter 25, which we're looking at Africa during the early modern period. So, a couple things, don't forget, when we previously talked about West Africa, we looked at the states of Ghana and Mali, whose capitals were Timbuktu. The most important person from Mali, don't forget, was Mansa Musa. He was not the founder. That was Sundiata of Mali, but Mansa Musa is probably the most important one. So now we're going to get on to the last of the three big states of West Africa that you need to know, and that's Songhai. It's either going to be spelt with a Y or an I. Either way, the expansion of and consolidation of the Songhai Empire came under Sunni Ali, this guy, in the 1460s. So here's where it is. Timbuktu is still going to continue to be this huge center of Islamic scholarship and knowledge and learning. The rulers are still going to be Islamic, but the capital of Songhai is going to be Gao. And that's like right there next to Timbuktu. The Swahili city-states of East Africa, East Africa over here, the ones close to the Indian Ocean. Again, rulers are, and the merchants are still practicing Islam. Vasco da Gama is going to force the ruler of Kilwa, which is the little city-state over here, in the early 1500s to start paying him tribute. And then by the early 1500s, the Portuguese start to raid the towns of the Swahili states, and then they had the fleet come in and pretty much conquered them by 1505. So they're done with. I said you do have, Islam is going to be predominantly the big religion in Africa. Ethiopia up here is going to be the Christian kingdom. They're going to continue Christianity for a while. Down here in South Africa, just to note, the Dutch are going to set up Cape Town in 1652. You're going to have lots of Dutch colonists in South Africa. They're called Boers. They're going to drive away the natives. Eventually, the Dutch lose control of South Africa, and that goes to the British. But for a while, South Africa is going to be a very prosperous European colony. So just know that South Africa down here is controlled by the Dutch. A couple other things. When we get to the triangular trade, it's also called the Atlantic system. That's the more correct term in AP world because it, encompasses everything in the Atlantic area. But basically, you have Europeans taking goods to Africa, like horses and guns and ammunition, and they are trading all of that for slaves. These slaves that are coming out of West Africa were war captives, criminals, or outcasts. So that's where other people of West Africa would go a little bit further inland, capture people, and have prisoners of war. So then they can sell them or trade them for slaves to the Europeans. Sorry, the noise you hear in the background is me heating up my lunch. Then you had step 2, which was the Middle Passage, which was where the slaves were traded to the Caribbean. And then they would be dispersed to Brazil or North America. And they're traded for sugar and rum. And then you have your sugar and rum going to Europe so that they can be, your raw materials be processed into finished products. But the problem with the slave trade is it's going to have a very profound impact on gender relations. 2/3 of the slaves that are exported from Africa to the Americas are males. So in some places like in Angola in Africa, you're going to start to have polygamy because there's lack of men, and women are going to have to take on men's duties. So a man would have multiple wives because, there's not as many men for the women. But like I said, you get that particularly in Africa. plantations are going to depend on slave labor. They need super cheap labor, which is why they can go trade guns for slaves and send them to the Americas. By the mid to late 1700s, you do start to see resistance to slavery. Overall, the traditional slave resistance included like sabotaging equipment, working very slowly, trying to escape. If there was a revolt, it was very, very rare, and it was very brutally suppressed by the slave owners. But the only successful slave revolt that's going to end slavery in the region is going to be down here in Saint Domingue, which is Haiti. So in 1793, which is in the midst of the French Revolution, which is partly why it's successful, and we'll get more into this when we get to period 5. The slaves revolted, they abolished slavery, and then they established Haiti. So this is like the only slave revolt that actually ended slavery in the region that it was in. This chapter was pretty short. There wasn't a lot that y'all were expected to read since, we're at the end of the semester. But we will pick back up next semester, probably with chapter 27.